Good Good afternoon. We're going to get started on our afternoon hearing. Thank you so much. We're glad to be joined this afternoon by our colleagues over at the Pennsylvania State Police, one of the finest police organizations in the country. I'm glad to have Colonel Parrish here with all of those who help keep us safe throughout this Commonwealth. Colonel, if you would start by introducing all those that you have with you, and once that is completed, we will swear everyone in and begin the hearing.
Chairman, thank you very much. It's our pleasure to be here today. To my left is our Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens. To his left is our Deputy Commissioner of Staff, Lieutenant Colonel Joanne Reed. To my right is my Special Assistant, Ms. Brooke Mead. And to her immediate right is our Deputy Commissioner of Administration and Professional Responsibility, Lieutenant Colonel Chris King.
Thank you. Chairman Struzzi, any introduction comments or no? Any introduction comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And we welcome you guys here to this afternoon's hearing. We look forward to hearing your testimony. We truly appreciate everything the State Police does for our Commonwealth. And with that, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Colonel, if you and your associates could please stand so we could swear everyone in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. You may be seated. Colonel, do you have any opening remarks, or you want to go straight to questions?
We can proceed with the questions, Chairman.
Thank you. We will start with Representative Flood.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for all that you do to keep the people of Pennsylvania safe in all of the special events and just on the everyday scale. Thank you for everything that you do. My question is related more to your request for special emergency response. You've stated previously that the CERT has increased 236% since 2017, correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Yes. So do you have shift troopers from other regions to compensate for such events temporarily or permanently?
So to tee this up for Lieutenant Colonel Bivens, CERT, I believe, it was activated north of 650 times this past year, which is a significant increase over the prior year. But under the last administration, Colonel Vanchik, those CERT teams were made full-time positions. Prior to that, we had a limited number of them that served in a full-time capacity. The remaining tactical operators and negotiators had full-time jobs in other places. And for exactly the reason that you said, frequently, because you couldn't predict the operational environment when a CERT call would be called in, we made the decision, and they are based full-time now out of our aviation units, and that is their full-time job.
So what's the average annual operating cost for CERT activities, given the increased number of incidents?
I would turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens.
I believe of course, we do as much as we can on regular time and adjust shifts. The overtime is a little over $2 million, if I recall correctly, that we spend on that particular team.
And how is the team managed? How many troopers are involved? How often are they deployed on average? And do you anticipate any further changes meeting these operational challenges?
So there are currently about 67 full-time CERT operators, and then there are a number of additional part-time negotiators that can be activated from within the troops. Those operators work out of 6 hubs located in various locations around the Commonwealth, and they can be activated both for pre-planned incidents, for example, search warrants, or other large-scale events that we plan to use them on, or they'll be called out for unplanned events such as a barricaded gunman or some other type of a situation that unfolds rather quickly. They'll deploy from those locations, or if they're off-duty from home, they have vehicles assigned to each one of them, and then we have the ability to in addition to the equipment that they have with them in their vehicles, we have the ability then to deploy additional armored vehicles or other equipment as necessary to support their mission.
How is CERT structured, and what kind of capabilities does it have, such as SWAT, bomb detection, and disposal?
So CERT is essentially our SWAT team. We have within the Bureau of Emergency and Special Operations a number of other teams as well that support CERT. So we have hazardous device and explosive section, for example, a bomb squad, if you will.
Right, yeah.
And so depending on the type of incident, if there's a suspicious device or some reason to believe that there's some hazard there, we'll bring the HDES team out. They can also do explosive breaching along with CERT if we needed to use that as a method to gain entry. And then we have a number of other specialties as well that can be activated in conjunction with CERT. Aviation is a good example. They also have drones that they operate from within CERT. And so any of those things that we need, depending on the incident, can be brought to bear.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question. The other concern with staffing and expenditures related to the operations for the special events. We have a number of special events coming up in the next year with an array of high-level events slated to occur across the Commonwealth, most notably America 250 is going to be taking place, as well as the FIFA World Cup down in Philadelphia. Have there been any discussions on how to address the need for the heightened presence during these events?
There is a lot of planning ongoing, ma'am. And so it involves partners from a lot of different agencies at the local, state, and federal level. There's a lot of coordination and determining who's responsible for what. In addition, part of that planning is looking at what teams will be responsible for various security activities. And so that can be anything from far in advance, criminal intelligence folks gathering information on potential threats, analysts looking at those threats and looking at ongoing an information flow that is ongoing and help direct what some of the response activities might be, but all of that is being coordinated, and it's far beyond CERT. I mean, we pool resources from across the agency to support those activities. So it'll be uniformed troopers from various stations, and if need be, from entirely across the Commonwealth, and then various other undercover assets that may work in a crowd, or again some of the other specialties that I've talked about. They'll be on standby.
So for instance, like when we had the Eagles Super Bowl parade last week, which is amazing, when you do those events, do any of the local authorities help defray the cost that is incurred by you?
No.
No. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm out of time, but I appreciate your answers, and we'll move on to the next question. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Kincaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you all for being here today. I've asked this question for 3 years in a row, and here we go again. Where I'm going to talk about the diversity of the, or lack thereof, of the state trooper complement. I have to say, it continues to be disappointing that the number of underrepresented groups and the percentage of graduates has basically stayed constant, despite the fact that every year we talk about this, and every year you talk about how you're committed to making sure that more folks are included in the complement, and as we invest more money in trying to get more cadet classes through. I'm very concerned about the fact that you're estimating that the underrepresented groups, the percentage of graduates in the 25-26 graduating class would be 11.5%, which is fully 10% of a drop from the other, previous classes. And I'm wondering what it is that you guys are doing in order to improve that and get some more diversity in our state trooper complement.
Thank you for the question. As you said, we are committed to doing it. If I could take a step back, I've quoted the number before. The low watershed mark in 2016 was 268 Black, Brown, or Asian members of the agency. When I first testified before the legislature in 2020 as a deputy in Lieutenant Colonel King's position, when I came in, we were at 324. When I left at the end of 2021, we were in the 350s. When I returned as the commissioner, we were in the high 350s. Last year when we were here, we were in the 370s. Today, as we sit here, we're at 408. It is certainly not where we want to be, but I can tell you that beyond recruiting diversity, recruiting in general continues to be a very challenging proposition for all law enforcement. I'm not aware of a panacea or an agency anywhere in the United States that has a magic bullet. To that end, we have taken steps to remove the college requirement while at the same time trying to be committed to education and signing 2 letters of understanding with both Commonwealth University in the PASHE system as well as the University of Maryland to offer people, once they come on the job, 20 credits and 60 credits for completing our academy to incentivize people to go back. That's a separate issue, but I just mentioned that to say the removal of the college requirement was not undertaken lightly. We did participate in a $700,000 advertising campaign, which by traditional metrics was well run, the number of hits, the number of people who completed and who watched the content, et cetera. But we really find ourselves in a difficult area in terms of general interest, I would say, across the United States in terms of coming into law enforcement. That means, again, that we are still committed. So last year, for example, our recruiters were at 2,400 incidents or events, 200 touches per month, historical black college and universities. We have a program with the military to try and incentivize people in the military, but in addition, diverse members of the military, because they do get the 10 points on the test. We're not a civil service, but they do get awarded 10 points. But then in this year's budget, there's a $300,000 appropriation, and we've really tried to commit to a long-term, protracted. We were at 268, we're at 408 today. At the dissolution of the consent decree, we were at 500 in the late 90s. Are we there yet? No, we're not, but I can tell you that this command staff has committed, along with building a world-class, nearly $500 million training academy, to incentivize people to consider becoming a trooper. But we've really looked at it from our Camp Cadet programs across the Commonwealth. So if there are youth, 13 to 15, 16, that are interested in law enforcement, that $300,000 appropriation will go to our Hill Impact program and our Law and Leadership program, both of which we began in pilots but have expanded across the Commonwealth. And I turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel King to give you some additional information.
So back in 2021, we started with the Law and Leadership program up in the Wilkes-Barre area.
Can you pull the microphone closer to you? Thank you.
Sorry about that. So we piloted that program. It was actually started by a local trooper, Dave Peters, up there. We took a look at it. We thought this was something that we can roll out to the rest of the state. At the same time, we also piloted a program called the Hill Impact program that's geared towards 15 to 18-year-olds. And that was down at the academy, and that was started by Trooper Clint Long. And again, this is in addition to the Camp Cadets that we were doing. It's just another step to try to encourage our younger citizens to, consider a career in law enforcement. We also partnered with the National Guard as well, because they're experiencing recruiting issues as well. And so in that partnership, we started that. Law and Leadership would be 19 and older for people considering law enforcement. We expanded that to the 4 corners of the state. So we now have locations not only in Wilkes-Barre, but in Philadelphia, the Academy, Greensburg, and I believe we're starting one out in Erie later on this spring. We also, in partnership with the Office of Community Engagement, which began in 2021, to get out into the more urban areas where, again, we're trying to make those connections with a more diverse population. If you typically, I came from a city, I grew up, I never seen a state trooper before. So when I moved out to the rural areas, that was my first encounter with state trooper. So one of the main purposes of Office of Community Engagement was to get our people out there to meet the communities, especially the more diverse communities. So in partnership with Office of Community Engagement, recruitment, we've been really targeting Philadelphia, Pittsburgh areas, and in addition to the programs I just mentioned, we're hoping to leverage that to encourage more people, especially diverse members of our communities, to become a trooper or
Thank you.
join the National Guard.
My time has expired. Chairman, can I have 30 seconds?
25.
Okay. This honestly might be something that would be better if you guys provided in writing, but I wanted just some clarity. The information that we have is underrepresented groups, percentage of applicants, and then percentage of graduates. And I think there's a line that's sort of missing in between applicants and those who are actually accepted to the academy, and then the graduates. And I was wondering if you guys could provide that information as to how many applicants are accepted from the underrepresented groups, and then how many are actually graduating.
Sure, we can get that information to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank the gentlelady. I just want to remind everybody, each member has 5 minutes to ask questions. So to our testifiers, that little black box in the middle is going to turn green just when our members start, yellow when there's 30 seconds left, and red when time has expired. We appreciate a full answer, but if we could do a full fast answer so that because we're going to be here until 5 o'clock. I'll stay, but I'm just saying, we're trying to keep everything on schedule. So I appreciate y'all. Representative Kutz.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, and let me thank you for your service to our Commonwealth and to all the men and women under your command. We're grateful for your professionalism and the way you conduct yourselves and your openness with us as well. I'd like to just ask a brief, simple question about the Commonwealth Vehicles Inspection Program. I noticed an increase in the line item there, and just curious, right now that's supported by the PUC and some of their inspectors. Curious what the increase means for you guys. Are you taking over more inspections for commercial vehicles? The reason I ask, we have a small borough in the 87th District of Cumberland County, which I represent, Mount Holly Springs. It is the thoroughfare. People going from 15, they got to cut over to 81. They come over the mountain through Holly and wreak havoc. So I'm curious about those vehicle inspections, as we have overweight trucks, mostly out-of-state drivers. Their GPS has sent them down the route and they're over the weight limit. So just if you could provide an update, I'd appreciate it.
I'd say just generally, commercial motor vehicle enforcement is a critical function of what we do in terms of making sure that those vehicles are safe and that they're appropriately registered and permitted, because they are heavier and they can do more damage to the roads. But I'd turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens to talk about our programs in the Bureau Patrol. We have several hundred troopers across the Commonwealth that do that duty for us.
And so we are looking to further expand that program. There's a lot of work to be done out there. But we're also taking on more of the administrative role in terms of the initial inspections of businesses and commercial vehicles that are being operated by those businesses. And so we're using additional civilian motor carrier enforcement officers to be able to do that, and reallocating some of those positions, taking them from positions on the road, using troopers for that, and then using those motor carrier enforcement officers to do this other function that is also vitally important to us, and all part of the much larger motor carrier inspection program.
Outstanding. I appreciate that. I think it's a vital service. It's the Keystone State. Everyone comes through Pennsylvania, so whether we have Pennsylvania-based distributors that are traveling through commercial vehicles, or the out-of-state ones that are coming through, appreciate all the work that you all do there. With that, hoping to make the chairman happy and to yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
You're a good man, Representative. You're a good man. Thank you. Representative Salisbury.
Thank you very much. My question today has to do with the state police's interaction with municipal government. So we know that roughly half of Pennsylvania's in excess of 2,500 municipalities are using the services of the state police as their police, and over 400 of those municipalities have some sort of a combination of local police and state police coverage. That's very true of the district that I represent in Allegheny County. Last spring, we had an incident at Jesus Dwelling Place Church, which unfortunately was not what I wanted my district to get national news coverage for, but a young man stepped into the center aisle of a church during services on a Sunday morning and fired his gun at the pastor. Fortunately, that gun jammed, and another member of the church was able to tackle him and hold him down. The regionalized police force had only been sworn in the previous Thursday, so due to the newness as well as what you've described as the difficulty in recruiting police officers, there was in fact no one on duty. So they had to hold this man down for over 20 minutes waiting for the state police to respond. Now, while we are incredibly grateful for the state police's ability to respond, I am concerned about those wait times. So knowing that you're not seeking funding in this year's budget from municipalities for those services, is there a long-term plan on how to cover these types of issues so that we don't have a 20-minute delay?
So in terms of a funding model, not one that we're aware of, prepared to discuss today. The pivot issue that I would say would be in this year's proposed budget is the removal of the complement cap. So the money to hire troopers that we have up against that enlisted complement, along with response time. So I would take a step back and say, as you're well aware, I think there are about 90 regionalized police departments, which we would try and support that along with our over 1,000 municipal partners, but the vast majority of those are 15-person or less operations. Given the 80+% of the 45,000 square miles of the Commonwealth to which we respond, we do at times struggle with response time. Thankfully, I'm aware of that incident. And I would say to you that, our ask is that we look at the complement cap. There are some other, not to go away from response time, but the post-traumatic stress leave, which will take effect in October, the regular limited duty, the heart and lung, exactly what you're saying. You brought up a good point about 400 agencies that rely on us for part-time service. There's a huge qualitative metric in there where they're classified as a part-time agency, but the amount of shifts that they're actually working significantly constricts due to budgetary issues, and yet they still show up as one of those 400 that create a perception that they're perhaps working more shifts than they really are. And as we deal with that constriction, I would say over the last 9 years, we can say probably close to 4 dozen agencies are no longer in existence that were providing police services 9 years ago. Really to take a look at that with the amount of money and the personnel hours for those different leave types that we're facing, it's difficult in the operating environment because we really don't know on a sleepy Sunday morning, unfortunately, people's worship service is going to be potentially interrupted by, thankfully, the gun jammed, but a mass shooting incident.
Yes, it really could have been a lot worse than it is. I'd like to shift my question just to ask a quick follow-up as well. We do know that we in houses of worship often face risks across the Commonwealth. Of course, in Pittsburgh, we're well aware of the synagogue shooting and the church shooting that I mentioned just outside of the city. Do you have particular strategies or plans at the state police level that you are trying to approach some of these faith-based or faith-related attacks?
The answer is yes, and I would say kind of a twofold. We offer free of charge our risk vulnerability and assessment team, which goes out to houses of worship, and I would also talk about the work of our Governor's Office of Homeland Security, which I know several times through 2024 brought houses of worship together to discuss security measures, planning, and we're always, again, trying to maintain the best operational intelligence that we can through PASIC and the Watch Center to make sure that we can operationalize that intelligence.
And I would like to, again, say thank you for the troopers' response in my community, and also thank you because I teed you up there a little bit for an answer that I already knew, because they have also come out to my district to talk to some of the faith-based organizations and houses of worship, and it has been an incredible and invaluable experience. So thank you as well.
Very good to hear, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative DeVanzo.
Thank you, Chairman Harrison. Thank you, Colonel Paris, for being here today and your staff here. Wanted to start off by thanking you guys for what you do, and I want to give my troops A and B a shout out back home. Appreciate everything those guys do for us. I want to get into the $14.5 million that the governor has budgeted for the 4 new cadet classes. How many vacancies do we currently have right now?
So just to make sure, as we sit here today, there are 248 vacancies, but that's under the 4,841 cap, which includes those positions that don't count against the cap. The real number is 4,410. If we take into account those vacancy numbers, I believe we're at 219. So there are 219 vacancies, which we have a cadet class that's in there about halfway through, about to come out in May. We just matriculated another class on Sunday. As we bump up against that complement, they can be cadets without a state police employee number. But as they walk across the stage, they need that employee number.
I got you. Do you see that number of vacancies staying steady? You see an uptick in maybe folks retiring, maybe leaving? What I'm getting at is that number, is this 4 classes something that we need to maintain moving forward? Do we need to step it up? Do we need to lower it a little bit? Or?
Well, if the complement cap was removed, then we could come down here year in, year out and justify what we really need. There's the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee report from 2019 that didn't really quantify an actual number, but they did take note of the myriad of functions, RVAT, to carry off the last answer being one of them, that didn't exist the last time there was a complement increase in 2002. With gratitude to both the governor and the legislature, in December of 2023, we did have a 100 trooper increase. But as we look at operationally what the projections look like within the state police, you can retire at 20 years or 25 years. We have a mandatory retirement at 60. So the number that we would look at is how many members at the end of 2025 have more than that 20-year mark, because members, again, it's an independent decision on a local, a very personal level, financial level, but do they have military time that they can buy? So there's about 1,038, give or take, call it close to 1,150 at the end of this year, who will have 20-plus years, which would be, again, not all of those are going to immediately walk out the door, but it is concerning to us from an operational standpoint.
All right, cool. Roughly the 4 new cadet classes, 432 new troopers. What do you think the graduation rate would be? Or I guess, what is the typical graduation rate of a class?
So I'd say generally, before I turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel King, we see attrition rates somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 20%. We've tried through the recruiting process to attenuate that through the Cadet Life Tour, the mentoring program, et cetera. We do look at that, and I would say when this class that just showed up, for example, on Sunday night, we have a lot of money invested in those cadets as they walk in the door. The needle that we're trying to thread, though, is we don't want any attenuation of the training that we need them to have for the most extreme cases or incidents to which they'll respond.
What are some of the reasons that the cadets are dropping out? Just simply they just don't have what it takes? You're not mentally, physically strong enough? There's just, because it takes a special breed to do what you guys do. Let's not lie.
Right. I would say I never wanted to be one of the people who approached 50 years of age and, cast an aspersion that, quote unquote, kids today don't have what it takes. I will tell you the opposite. The cadets that we see walking across, I'm very encouraged with their level of commitment and their level of attention, their level of just, an altruistic motive to go out and do the job. That having been said, the training that we undergo is an abasement model training. It's a stress academy where we're trying to recreate as best we can, the difficulties that may be encountered on the job. I spoke this morning before the Senate, not in any way to besmirch or belittle any other trooper who's given the ultimate sacrifice, but I think of Trooper Rougeau at Lewistown on a day off, on a Saturday, who hears that someone has showed up and shot up the barracks. He goes into work. That's somebody who, yes, needs a paycheck, yes, is extrinsically motivated, but I would articulate as somebody exceedingly committed to the mission. So I think, we're in difficult headwinds recruiting nationally, as I said. I think there are people out there, and we're committed to go out there and try and get them to consider us number one. But when they get the shot to go to the academy, they have to earn the training and make their way.
Yeah, appreciate your feedback. Thank you guys. Always here for you guys, and I'm proud and happy to support you guys always.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Gallagher.
Thank you, Chairman. And Colonel, it's nice to have you back in the building again. I just want to say thank you to you and your team for all the hard work that they did during the plane crash that we had a few weeks ago. It was a tragic accident, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate all the support you guys have given us and how great a job your troopers did. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
In 2023, the PSP commenced the pilot program for body cams. It's my understanding this was a successful pilot program. And can you tell me what made this pilot a success?
I will take a step further and say the good news is that it's a full-blown implementation. Our pledge was to roll body cams out by second quarter of 2025. I'm happy to report that it's on budget and will be ahead of schedule this April. We've made commitments when we testified last year to prioritize some different geographic areas and push them to the top of the list, which we were able to do, and I would turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Reed. Her shop has done an excellent job in rolling that out. By April 15th, we will be fully operational.
So during the pilot program, we were able to work out all the IT-related concerns that we had. One being we were able to figure out what is called a split tunneling of our modems. Instead of having to buy 2 modems for our cars, we were able to split the one, which will save almost $1 million annually in cost. Right now, 14 of the 16 troops have the equipment. We're finishing up with Troop M and Troop T.
Well, you answered my other two questions on the first question, so I just want to say thank you for your time, and I appreciate all the hard work you guys do.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Colonel, for being here. I appreciate the opportunity for you guys to be here and highlight, how great the state police are. I say it every year, but I do find you guys to be the most professional and experienced law enforcement agency that there is, and it's an honor for you guys to serve us. So I want to get into the complement. You were talking a little bit with Representative Devanzo about the complement and the increase of 100 troopers that we passed 2 years ago, I should say. Can you just explain what the complement cap is a little bit more so folks understand what that is and how that is restrictive to you?
Sure. So I'll try to round out those two different numbers that I was using, and I turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens to talk about those several buckets of leave that impact that. So the statutory enlisted complement was 4310. After December of 23, it is now at 4410. There are essentially 3 organizational segments that don't count against that complement: the troopers that serve on the turnpike, the troopers that serve in gaming, liquor control, and then a much smaller number that are on a Delaware port or bridge authority north of Philadelphia. So with those troopers included in, if you said how many is the maximum, that's where the 4841 number. So when I distinguish the vacancy rate, how many vacancies, 248, as we sit here today, is out of the 4841. 219 is actually out of the legislated complement cap. And I would turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens to give you some additional impacts about those various leave types.
So very quickly, the challenge for us is as we come up against that 4,800 plus number, we can't hire additional cadets to be troopers. And so we always have to have some vacancy, some cushion there so that we have position numbers available for hire. In addition to that, the thing that also impacts us, there are a number of leave types. Our members get injured in a line of duty and sometimes off duty. But to give you some idea, the number of members, when we take a look at the number of hours of limited duty that are used in a year, it's the equivalent of 98 full-time troopers when you put all those hours together. And then when you add in workers' comp and you add in parental leave, in total, it totals out to about 175 positions. So we automatically, in addition to the cushion we have to keep so that we can hire new cadets, we're also not able to take full use of or make full use of that other 175, and we have PTSI a benefit that is coming up here shortly. Yeah. And if even 1% of the agency avails itself of that, we'll be at over 225 positions. So those position numbers become very important to us in that hiring process.
So just to be clear there, so folks that may be, technically an employed trooper, but might be, like you said, on some type of disability or parental leave, they still count towards the complement, is what you're saying.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so clearly one of my questions was going to be, have you done an analysis of what the complement cap is? And clearly it sounds like you have. Is there room for expansion? Obviously I don't think you're advocating to lower the cap. So is there room for improvement there?
There is. We have the capacity at the academy. We also have the capacity at the stations. When we enter into a new lease or a build of a station, we build for the future so that there is some percentage of capacity increase there in case that's needed. But, one of the things that we see, aside from just looking at the numbers of how many troopers, we start looking at the obligated time of those troopers. And when we look at that, a national standard is that you really don't want to be over 50% of obligated time. And right now, we're bumping up over that and getting closer to 51%. Where that comes in is the response times that we talked about earlier. You can't pre-plan and schedule all of your incidents out so that one follows another. So you may get 10 at a time at a station,
right,
and then nothing for a little while. You have to have that surge capacity to be able to respond and prioritize those incidents and respond to them. And that's where, again, the numbers start to become problematic for us at current levels.
Yeah, and from an area where you guys are really the chief law enforcement agency in Adams and Cumberland County, the areas I represent, I can understand why that's even more, not concerning isn't the right word, but more important that you have the right complement to be able to provide public safety in those areas. Colonel, you talked a little bit about, or you talked in your opening remarks about the new leadership program, the $300,000 that was appropriated. Can we just go a little bit more in detail there about what you see? Is that something that's going to be a you're going to continue to use? Or?
I wish that I could be here and say we have more diverse members and more people that want to be troopers than we can possibly process. That's not the recruiting environment that we find ourselves, but we've been committed. Again, that report, I see that report every month. That's why I can tell you that I know it was 268, I know it was 325, I know it's 408 today. And really over time, we're hoping to have a paradigm where a youth is involved in Camp Cadet, let's say. Maybe we miss them at Camp Cadet, but then we get them at the Law and Leadership Program, or the Hill Impact Program, excuse me. And then maybe we miss them and they're out of college or they're in college and they're contemplating a career in law enforcement, and we have the Law and Leadership Program. And we additionally to that, our recruiters are out 2,400 times last year. So 200 times a month, we're out there trying to touch people where they are. Hey, consider us. Hey, you might not have seen a trooper in the area where you grow up, but these are all of the functions that we perform, and we're dying to have you come and consider to become a trooper.
Well, Colonel, I thank you for your time, and I really appreciate what you do for the Commonwealth and the service you provide and the public safety, and I will forever honor what you guys do. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We thank the gentleman, Representative Mays.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Colonel, and all your leadership for joining us today. I want to talk to you about sexual assault the testing backlog. So you know that has been an issue of concern over the past several years and arguably before that. And the Auditor General issued a special report on the topic back in 2016. So my question for you today is, is there an existing backlog, and how many, if there is an existing backlog, how many rape kits need to be tested at this point?
Thank you for that question. That's something that we've worked very diligently on. It's in Lieutenant Colonel Reed's shop, and I believe we have some good news to report there.
So in 2024, we tested around 800 sexual assault kits. There are still around 200 in the backlog. As per the statute, we're required to test the kits within 6 months, and we're currently doing it within 3.5 to 4 months. Also, our new DNA lab is almost completed. It'll be done by the end of this year, which will give us more opportunity to hire personnel and reduce the backlogs even more.
Thank you for that. That's amazing progress, and we know the role that you play in addressing and combating into sexual assault and sexual violence in our Commonwealth. So I appreciate that information. And my next question is related to the staffing. You are requesting additional staff for the DNA lab. We see that you're requesting 5 new positions, and do you anticipate that that will help to prevent the backlog going forward and even increasing processing times and efficiency?
The short answer is yes, before I turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Reed. In order to do DNA testing, the sample has to be tested first through serology. So there is a two-step, 2 separate disciplines within the lab structure. And then also, before we discuss that, we've made a commitment to rapid DNA. We've purchased 15 rapid DNA profiling machines. They are, we believe, going to be extremely impactful for directing investigations in the field. It's not going to take the place of a full DNA analysis, but of topical note, we loaned 5 of them in real time to the Philadelphia Forensic Services Unit, Philly PD, in the aftermath of the plane crash. So just to have that additional capacity out there, but to turn it back over to Lieutenant Colonel Reed about, in addition to the rape kit testing, trying to test expended shell casings to see if there is any trace DNA and address gun violence, we see that as a critical piece as well.
I don't really have anything else to add.
Thank you so much. And you already addressed if my question of whether the new DNA lab was on schedule to be completed. So that's also great news. Another question I have, is there a dedicated or special unit within the state police to address sexual assault as well as combat human trafficking? Do you have a dedicated team or unit that looks at those specific issues?
Yes, we do. Lieutenant Colonel Bivens.
So within our Bureau of Criminal Investigation, we have investigators that are specially trained and deal with human trafficking, and they serve really 2 purposes. One is, of course, to conduct investigations and to work with other agencies that don't have that specialty to assist them, but also to provide training out there, not only to law enforcement, but in the communities. And so we're trying to raise awareness. We're trying to ensure that PSP conducts thorough investigations. To that end, just this past year, we had well over 40 successful investigations and a number of prosecutions out of that. So we're seeing success and certainly look to improve upon that even in the future.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to hear all the progress. As you know, we need to work at all levels of law enforcement in our Commonwealth to combat sexual assault and sexual violence. Thank you very much.
Thank the gentlelady. Representative Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Colonels. Quick question, actually a little bipartisan tag team here. I just wanted to follow up on the 5 new positions you guys were talking about. I think, Colonel, you touched on it a little bit, DNA and forensic. What are those positions and what would they be doing?
The positions are for the DNA lab. So
Okay.
they're trainee positions, so they would train up to be a scientist. It will take around 9 to 12 months for them to do independent work.
Now, these people that are, these 5 new positions that you're bringing on, are they going to be working at your 7 current laboratories, or, and then I guess my question is, are they going to work at those 7 laboratories, and then actually last year the chairman scheduled a not like a committee field trip, but we went out to DEP and they said that they were getting the new laboratory with DEP, Health, and Ag, and you guys. Are these people going to be working at those facilities, or at that facility, or what's the projection on that?
They will work in the DNA lab in Greensburg.
So that's
all
different.
the DNA people work in one lab.
Okay.
The joint lab is where that you were referring to. As far as PSP's part, we're finishing up the design phase this month. Then PSP is going to be put on pause for around 12 months. And then the other state agencies are going to continue with their bid because their building is separate from ours.
Okay.
And then around this time next year, we'll put our facility out to bid. And all the facilities should be completed in 2029.
Okay, and then that's for the new facility, your section, your area, that new facility, correct?
Yes.
Am I understanding? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, have you guys projected your needs for funding for your current facilities?
Just for the labs, or?
Just for the labs, yeah, just on the lab side.
I don't.
We
most
don't
of them
really
are state-
project, I mean, the long-term capital project for the state lab where we will be on the grounds of the old Harrisburg State Hospital, separately located. That's a 93,000 square foot facility. We technically will close the lab that we currently have at departmental headquarters.
Okay.
And the added square footage in there will allow us 130 spots for employees. So as we try to expand capacity, and we've looked at this, especially with the firearms casing testing and some other disciplines in the lab, we're limited by physical space. So the projections for this DNA lab will be a game changer in terms of the ability for the workspace. I know Lieutenant Colonel Reed could speak a little bit more about this, but when you're conducting the test, you can't just really exchange workspaces because of the chain of custody issues and the compliance issues. So when we talk about trying to build capacity, perhaps by using multiple shifts and paying people to come in after hours, right now we're hamstrung a little bit by the amount of physical square footage. That hopefully in the DNA world out in Greensburg, that's going to be a huge development for us in the short term. As this capital project comes online, we're looking forward to closing the main lab at departmental headquarters on Elmerton and expanding down into the statewide lab.
No, I appreciate it. That was, I'm glad you guys got the answer to my question, even though I didn't ask the best question. I appreciate that. I don't have any further questions, so I'll turn it back over, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your service.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Bellman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Colonel. And I also want to echo Representative Gallagher's sentiments to represent Northeast Philadelphia, and the Pennsylvania State Police did an excellent job of taking care of our community when we needed you guys the most. So we really do appreciate it. I want to just ask about gun violence real quick. So gun violence continues to be a plague on the state, and citizens in high crime rate areas live with the emotional and physical costs of this public health epidemic. What has the Pennsylvania State Police done to combat gun violence?
Sure. Before I turn that over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens, I just kind of piggyback off the last question with the lab. So last year we examined 6,181 cartridges, for example, to try and develop a ballistic imprint from that cartridge to build a database out to try and, again, clear some of those cases, no pun intended, from committed by the same weapon potentially in different venues. And that led to 579 investigative leads and then 19 confirmed NIBIN hits. Again, trying to leverage that technological component. That's just to piggyback off the forensic analysis standpoint, but we have a vast network of task force collaborations as well as our SHIELD and criminal investigative units, and I turn that over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens.
So really, firearms and gun violence is addressed by all areas of our department. And so whether it's the patrol trooper that's out there, we provide regular training and updates to them on trends that we're seeing out there. We teach them about looking for firearms as part of their routine traffic stops. But beyond that, whether it's our interdiction units, we have investigative units that are out there that are working with the ATF, with the Attorney General's office, with Philly PD, with a number of other departments around the state. Our drug units, one of the major violations that they typically find along with drug violations are firearms violations, either firearms that are stolen or firearms that are unlawfully possessed, but all of those are addressed through all of those different avenues. We also use our criminal intelligence component to identify trafficking organizations, trafficking routes, and to be able to target those for enforcement efforts. But really, again, all of the various resources of the department come together. To give you some idea, just in the past year, we seized a little over 2,400 firearms just within PSP, and at least 56 ghost guns as a part of that as well. So, I mean, it's absolutely a priority of ours, and we continue to work diligently, to address it.
And just to add on there, just again, anecdotal, but cities like Harrisburg or Chester or Philadelphia, where we're working in concert with our municipal partners. Last year, we had an incident response team that repeatedly worked in the city of Harrisburg, seized $205,000 in cash, 21 weapons, 14 stolen vehicles, 48 fugitives, 66 felony arrests, and 54 misdemeanor arrests. Just Monday, the holiday, there was a pursuit, stolen vehicle, 15-year-old with a stolen firearm that we were able to recover here in the city of Harrisburg. So, I mean, we're committed to doing it, as the Colonel said, at all levels and all segments in the agency.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your answer and thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for your service as well. So as you're aware, the governor's executive budget has proposed the legalization of adult cannabis effective July 1, and then the sale of which should begin in January of 2026. The state police would receive $2.5 million in additional funding for the enforcement of adult use cannabis. And I'm just interested to find out if this was discussed with your agency, how the money would be utilized and implemented.
I have not discussed it with the governor.
You have not?
I have not discussed it with the governor.
Okay, but I'm
I would
sure.
just add to that, the way that money for enforcement would be used, or expungements, would be dependent upon the ultimate legislation that moved forward. So we're not aware of any plan. I would add that.
I think in terms of how that money would be spent, though, I mean, some of the discussions we've had internally would involve, depending on what expungements are required, what that volume looks like. Of course, a certain portion of that would go toward those expungements. The other part of it is that we anticipate the need for additional resources like drug recognition experts in the field. There is not currently a test or an instrument that can be used to detect marijuana or intoxication by marijuana. And so we rely on the observations of the officer making the stop or encountering the individual, and then we rely on the testimony of a drug recognition expert, and then possibly the results of a blood draw to look at, in totality, all of that. So, you know, there will be some additional training that has to occur. The other thing that will be affected are dogs that are utilized in narcotics detection right now have been trained on marijuana, and they would have to be retired. And so there would be some expense there and cost expense associated with acquiring new dogs and the training associated with it.
Good to know. You know, I've done some research on violent crime increase in surrounding states that have implemented the legalization of marijuana. In Oregon, 34% increase. Alaska, 94% increase in violent crime versus the national average. Colorado, 27% increase. Have you had any discussions or coordinated with any other law enforcement agencies in other states where the legalization of this marijuana has gone into effect?
We have spoken to our colleagues in some of those other states, and again, that's where some of what I've already talked about comes from, knowing that you know, we're going to need additional resources, particularly in the patrol function, with regards to highway safety, and you know, and then on the investigative side with the canines. But yes, we are aware of the experience that some of those states have had.
Because I would imagine we're already seeing bleed over from New York and Ohio as they have legalized marijuana. So how are we dealing with those issues already?
I don't know that we're in a position to say that it's been as a result of the bleed over. We simply don't have that kind of data. You know, we do have medical marijuana here. Certainly, marijuana is brought in from some other states. And again, what I would tell you is that we have seen a progressive increase in the number of DUI drugs as opposed to just strictly DUI alcohol. And so now, in the past year, we dealt with probably a little more than 14,000 DUIs in Pennsylvania, just PSP. And of those, we're seeing not quite an even split, but the number of DUI drugs has come up in comparison to what it was, and it's approaching the number of DUI alcohol.
It's definitely a concern as the crime rate, violent crime rate in particular in PA has gone down, and now we potentially could be facing this in the future with the legalization. Do you envision having enforcement activities and staff like liquor control enforcement in conjunction with the Liquor Control Board despite marijuana being federally listed as a Schedule 1?
Again, I think, as the Colonel said, it would depend on what the legislation is. There are a number of different models that I've heard tossed around about how the sale may occur, and I think we would need to have a seat at the table. We would hope to have a seat at the table in any discussion so that we could provide input for you all's decision as you move forward, if you move forward.
I agree, you need a seat at the table. Thank you very much.
Chair thanks the gentlelady and recognizes Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, it's great to see you and your staff here. I'm going to ask a question, and it's rhetorical in fairness, but what could you do, what could the Pennsylvania State Police do with an additional $30 million? I'm sure you have some ideas, right? So I'm going to sort of focus in on something that I talked about last year and something that the good gentlelady from Allegheny County brought up earlier, which is municipal coverage, state police coverage for municipalities. And according to our data, around 68% of the municipalities in the Commonwealth have some sort of state police coverage. There are 1,324 municipalities that rely on state police coverage full-time, and another 411 that rely on state police coverage at least part of the time. So I did some population estimates and back of the napkin math, which I was a communications major, so may or may not be right. But if we assumed each of those full-time municipalities has roughly 5,000 people, and we charge just $4 per person, that would raise nearly $27 million for state police to use, $26.84 million. I say all this to say, in the area that I represent, in the 105th Legislative District, our municipalities pay, on average, $200 per capita for our local law enforcement coverage. Now, and that means salaries, that means benefits, that means pensions for Susquehanna Township, Lower Paxton Township, and Pembroke Borough. And we pay taxes to the state as well. So we're paying twice for our police coverage, whereas, you know, there are municipalities that are essentially getting a free ride. And so I just want to ask, you know, is there a plan to try to get some sort of funding to the Pennsylvania State Police, initial funding, to be able to cover the cost of that coverage?
That's not the rhetorical part of the question.
No. I mean, is this something? Is this something that you all have planned for, or is this a proposal out of?
I would only say, you know, that's this year. There have been. I was part of a front office under the Wolf and Colonel Ivanchik, Governor Wolf and Colonel Ivanchik administration, where there was a plan proposed. Currently, there is not one. We're not here to discuss one today, and I would, you know, again, it's up to the legislature to.
With your experience, though, I'm just at a loss about why. Who loses? I mean, my residents are paying $200 for state police coverage per person, and yet we have the Pennsylvania State Police covering 2/3 of the state. And I'd be happy to talk about something else that we discussed today. I'd be happy to be helpful on the state police cap, to help give some relief on that front if we need to hire more officers to initiate a faster response in these areas. But, you know, to further continue with my math, for those that are getting part-time coverage, I assumed a population of 2,500 per municipality and charged a surcharge of $2. And that raised an additional $2 million. So $30 million, nearly $30 million could go to state police to help you hire more officers, to help you train more officers, and to help you get coverage that is quick and responsive, unlike the situation that the gentlelady in Allegheny County described. So I want to be helpful, I want to be part of the solution, but I don't understand why, as a matter of policy, the department isn't banging on the table for something like this.
Well, I just want to be clear to say that, you know, it's up to the legislature to ultimately determine how the state police is funded. Certainly, there have been discussions in the past about motor license fund and the amount of monies that the state police have been allocated out of that. Not to conflate the two issues, but my point simply is from an operational standpoint, we come to work every day trying to do whatever we can for the 270 troopers that we sent to Philadelphia, because Commissioner Bethel is down 1,300 officers. We're on the cusp of you know, many events coming up here in the Commonwealth, and I certainly don't, as the commissioner, don't want to create a paradigm whereby you know, people are perhaps reluctant to call for state police coverage, whether it's a manhunt for Michael Burham or Danilo Cavalcante in Warren or Chester County, two drastically different demographic, socioeconomic counties. Whether, you know, there's an Interstate 95 collapse in Philadelphia or a train derailment in Ohio, I just would say back to you, we would be part of any discussion, and we would want to be part of any discussion to assist the legislature in any ideas.
Yeah, I mean, we hear the old saying that there's no such thing as a free lunch, but there are a lot of residents in this Commonwealth who have gotten a free lunch in terms of PSP coverage for a long time. So thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you all for everything that you do. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Recognizes Representative Krupa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the Commissioner and to the testifiers today, and thank you certainly to all the men and women serving in our state police across the Commonwealth. It's a noble calling, and we each owe a debt of gratitude. I am very disappointed to hear that you were not given a seat at the table with respect to the conversations regarding legalizing marijuana. If you look at the other states, such as Colorado, that have done that, for every dollar that was generated in revenue, it's estimated that it was at least $4.50 in the cost of society in terms of increased crime, increased arrest, increased addiction issues, increased homelessness, increased truancy, and the list goes on and on and on. Setting aside that devastating impact that this will have on the family unit and society at large, there will be a real financial burden to the Pennsylvania State Police. It's a fair statement that legalizing marijuana is going to make your job harder, correct?
It's an ultimate determination of policy. I would say that certainly Pennsylvania, if the legislature chooses to move forward, would not be the first one to do it, and I think it's our job to try and enforce the law as written, learning best practices and lessons from others who have gone before us.
And I appreciate that response, but the fact of the matter is the $2.5 million increase in funding to the state police is in fact evidence that it's acknowledged that your job's going to be harder, that there's going to be increased operating costs. For example, and I'm glad that it was pointed out about the field sobriety tests and the scientific tests that your officers employ in the field. And unlike the current field sobriety test for alcohol, there is not one for marijuana. So that means in order to get a scientific report that's going to be admissible in court, that particular person that's under suspect of marijuana-induced DUI, however you want to refer to it, you're going to have to take that individual to a hospital for a lab draw. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. What is that going to do to your overall response times when your officers have to go, for lack of a better term, babysit the person that they've arrested at the hospital? Because that's not an in and out procedure. That takes some time, correct?
I would say that that's going to depend on where the stop is occurring. We do have some counties where they have booking centers where they can actually do the blood draws, and they'll take custody of the individual from there. Other more rural counties, that may not be the case, and we may have to go to the hospital, as you described, and spend additional time there. But it's really, it's going to be on a case-by-case. And quite honestly, there may be situations where there is no blood draw, but rather the observations of the officer and the observations of the DRE. Will there be challenges? Yes.
Absolutely. And so I represent the 51st District, which is Southern Fayette County, both an underprivileged and very rural community. And I could tell you, as somebody who's done criminal defense, that is opening up the door to a lot of arguments if you don't have that scientific lab result, which again is making it your job harder in terms of the time that your officers are going to have to spend in the courtroom prosecuting these various cases. With respect to, and I know that this has been testified to multiple times today, what is the current vacancy rate? How many more officers could we employ today if there were qualified candidates immediately available?
So the current vacancy rate sits at 248.
Okay. What, has there been any conversation about what expanding adult use marijuana is going to do to your workforce in terms of, I'm sure every industry I've spoke to, one of the common complaints is we can't get people that are ready, willing, and able to work, and we're having a problem getting somebody that can pass a drug test. So what different protocol are you going to have in place to make sure that your applicants are being screened appropriately to make sure that that we're getting the best candidates and that we're filling your complement to the greatest extent possible?
So short answer, we do have a random drug testing policy. Cannabis is tested for. We attempt to test about 10% of the workforce randomly every year, and I believe we've met those benchmarks. But for us, in terms of hypothetically, if it were legalized, as the law stands right now federally, there is a federal firearm prohibitor which would preclude the use of the firearm, which we need to send our troopers out with every day. So we would not contemplate state police being able to use, we cannot use medical marijuana right now, nor recreational.
And I'm very happy to hear that on a personal level. So what that means, though, is that you could have an officer who tests for employment, does their drug test. They have an inactive metabolite that, if Pennsylvania law changes, that they may have lawfully ingested. But PSP, because of federal law, is going to say, hey, no, thank you, you're not qualified.
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentlelady
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony.
and recognizes Representative Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Colonel Paris. And I want to first thank you and thank your team and thank all your troopers and your staff for all the work that you do. I want to let you know that that's the safety and supporting the health and wellness of our troopers is something that is on my mind as a nurse practitioner and is also on our minds as a body. Last session, Representative Jen O'Mara actually introduced a bill that I co-primed along with Representative Brennan for PTSI coverage for workman's comp for troopers, because we want to make sure that when your troopers get hurt and injured on the job because of the great work you do, that you're exposed to that, they get the treatment that they need. So I want to let you know that it's something that we work to get passed. Representative Flick, we're working on a bipartisan way to get a resilience grant for officers so that they can get mental health support when embedded in some of your troops, so you can have resilience coaches helping troopers. So I want to let you know that's something that's important to our body because we respect. It's not just something that we say that we respect you and we appreciate you, but actually proof in the pudding and passing laws is going to help the troopers. One of the questions I had was we actually met about, I think, a year and a half ago with the Black Caucus, and we talked about some of the disparities about people getting searched, probable cause searches, and I think black individuals were 1.5 times more likely to had searches, and Hispanic motorists, I think, were about 1.3 times, and actually they were less likely to find things, officers. One of the good things is that you all have actually worked to lower those rates. And actually, the report that just came out that I just saw, those rates were actually lower. I think it was 1.9 initially, and now it came out 1.5 times. So can you talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing to help lower these disparities of these motorists getting searched, and what work still needs to be done?
Sure. So I'll talk at the macro. We're fiscally committed. We've contracted with Dr. Robin Engel. The appropriation is about $215,000 a year. She's an internationally renowned expert in the field, and we feel that she's the best person qualified to analyze our data. We, wanted the additional independency of having her and her academic team do that. As you said, there was a period of time where we were not collecting the data, but since we've reintroduced it under the Governor Wolf, Colonel Ivanchik administration, the first year was a pilot program, because we wanted to make sure that the data was correct. So I can tell you that whatever the accepted misreading of the data is when you collect a large statistical sample, ours is infinitely lower than that. We're assured by Dr. Engel that the data capture that we're doing over the 3 years, first year was the pilot, and now, as you alluded to, we've brought 2 reports forward through Dr. Engel's team. We have the gold standard of collecting as much information as we can. As you said, who gets pulled over and whether they get a citation or whether they got a warning, there was no disparity. When it came to the search rates, which we're able to look back at our search rates traditionally when Dr. Engel was first involved in the state police, going back to around 2000, we've seen that disparate search rate decrease. The way down in the weeds multivariate statistical analysis portion of that is that it's very difficult to assign a specific attribute as to why the decision that a trooper makes to ultimately ask for consent to search the car, or conversely, or simultaneously believes that there's enough probable cause to go and get a warrant. I can tell you on that front, a good rate of finding contraband generally amongst law enforcement, according to Dr. Engel, is 35%. PSPs is much higher at 50 and close to 70%, depending if we're asking for consent to search and or seeking a warrant, which goes to all those other issues trying to interdict human trafficking, violent crime, guns, et cetera, illicit drugs. But when you ask, after that first full year after the pilot came out, we had additional data fields that we checked, and one of them was the presence of a criminal history or not, just as another variable. And when that analysis was done, that actually reduced the disparity in terms of going back in real time when the decision is being made on a multivariant statistical analysis, what's ultimately making the decision whether or not this car gets searched. So I can tell you that the rates are going down. The final thing that I would say, just from a systemic approach, body cams fully implemented, a robust internal affairs division that has a 24-hour upgraded $30,000 blue team program, which allows interactive real-time tracking for somebody who feels that they've been treated inappropriately, and we actively investigate those things. And I firmly believe, to go back to the contact data reporting, that which gets measured gets improved. You know, that's what we're going to be committed to do, and we're going to continue to do it.
Thank you. Chair thanks the gentleman and recognizes Representative Mostello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Parrish, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to all the troopers that are with you. Thanks for all you do for the good people of our Commonwealth. Every year you come before us, and this year is absolutely no different, that, discuss your budget needs, and the issue of more troopers is always a topic of discussion here. And we ask you to do a lot for the state. And I understand that's always going to come with more troopers, more of what's needed out there. One of the concerns I have is the state troopers who are stationed in the casinos that we have throughout the Commonwealth. How many troopers are currently stationed and assigned to the casinos?
We've got about 155 enlisted members assigned to those. And we have 13 casinos that they have responsibility for. There are 4 additional Category 4 casinos that are covered by the stations in those respective areas and do not have dedicated troopers assigned to them.
And what is the jurisdiction of the trooper in the casino? What's the jurisdiction you have?
Well, they're full-functioning troopers. I mean, they have statewide jurisdiction. Their primary assignment is the gaming floor and associated areas that are tied into the business side of the casino, so that, where cash may be, those kinds of things, that they would have responsibility for assisting with security there.
So if an incident happens outside the casino, who investigates, who would?
So it depends, and it depends if it's if there's a municipal department that has jurisdiction there, we will have in advance entered into a discussion and an agreement with that municipality. If they choose to, they'll have responsibility, say, in the parking lot. If they choose not to, we'll take it. If it's a primary PSP area, then our troopers will take it.
And this all started, was it back in around 2003 when casinos first came in and there was an agreement with having the state troopers staff these casinos? How active are the troopers there? How many investigations have they been involved in? Where are we? I mean, 22 years ago.
They actually stay fairly busy there. One of the concerns about removing the troopers from there is, I already talked about the the 4 Category 4 casinos where we do not have troopers assigned. Now, those are smaller casinos than the other Category 1, 2, and they may be comparable to the 3s. The issue we have, particularly at the Category 1 and 2s, I mean, we may handle upwards of 1,500 incidents a year at each of those casinos.
So 1,500 at the 13 casinos overall?
Yes.
And what are they?
They can range of anything from a child left unattended in a vehicle to theft, fraud, underage gambling, someone trying to gain access to the casino floor, excluded people that are not permitted to be on the floor because they've been self-excluded or have been otherwise excluded under Commonwealth law. And so there's really a whole range of anything that you see in society, we'll see there. Of course, a lot of alcohol-related issues, some assaults, those types of things, and I already mentioned the thefts that they handle quite.
And that 1,500 number that you gave of the 13 casinos, is that annual? Is that over a period of 10 years? Is that?
No, I said that's an annual.
Oh, that is an annual?
Yes, ma'am.
1,500.
And some of the casinos are a little busier, some are less busy. I'm giving you an average, but I don't think you would find any of the casinos with less than 1,000 incidents.
So of those 1,500 incidents, how many arrests are they making?
It depends. I'd have to look at each category.
Can you get back
Some
to
of them
us?
are, we can get back to you, yes. Some of those are, and we prepare an annual report for the legislature.
Oh, you do?
As well,
Okay,
that
great.
has all of those statistics in it, but, a lot of summary offenses, but it can be all the way up to felonies, that are on view there.
So you have agreements with local municipal police departments in and around the casinos if they need any assistance, if they're there, meaning that, again, the discussion topic today has been about more troopers that are needed. We need more men and women out there. Would this be something that you could look at to put some of these troopers, 155 of them that you have now in 13 casinos, maybe moving them around a little bit? Maybe things have changed within the past 22 years.
They're funded by the casinos.
Right.
And so, we have committed to using them in the casinos. They will work with the locals, and certainly, again, if a city PD has an incident in a parking lot, our troopers are absolutely going to respond out there and work with them to handle that incident. They would not leave the casino and go handle an incident somewhere else in the city.
Mm-hmm.
If the department needed assistance, the local station would assist them.
Okay. I'd like to carry on the conversation if we could later, maybe, and discuss that a little bit further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair thanks the gentlelady and recognizes Representative Webster.
And thank you, Chair. And Colonel Powers, thank you for you and your team being here today. I'm going to ask a couple questions about background checks, but excuse me while I go off script for a moment. I've listened to the debate in the hall here and some of the questions around legalization of marijuana and associated crime or other incidents. And so for a minute, the PhD in me wants to talk and make sure we're understanding there are, in terms of law enforcement, issues around legalization, like how do we determine toxic, if someone's driving under the influence, how do we regulate the potency of these products? But the accusation or the statement that there's increased car accidents or crime associated with legalization is what any good attorney would call circumstantial evidence. So I asked the author of that study that said Colorado had all these problems, I asked him face to face, did you control for population growth? And his answer was no. And if you don't know, Colorado legalization of marijuana, more car accidents. At the same time, their population was increasing dramatically. The other consideration that's different than Pennsylvania is when Colorado legalized marijuana, the surrounding states did not. So people were driving into Colorado to purchase marijuana legally. And then that, so there's a lot more activity. Our situation is a little different. So while we have a lot of policy decisions to make around legalization, we should be really careful about saying what are the legal, like whether it's criminal activity or car accidents associated with the legalization, because no one has determined that in the study. In fact, there are other studies that say, you know, the legal aspects are actually easier because you're not arresting people for possession and minor incidents like that. So I want to be careful about those kind of circumstantial statements. So excuse me while I rant. Background checks. We have a Pennsylvania, check system, and we have a national check system. What are the benefits to Pennsylvania by having a separate and independent way to do that?
Sure. I believe Pennsylvania is one of 13 or 14 states that has its own standalone system. The system, I believe, is very well run under Lieutenant Colonel Reed's shop. The number of checks last year was down slightly. We do use NICS, which is the national system, but the additional benefits, before I turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Reed, are the additional databases that PICS is able to touch, such as PFAs or any juvenile records that are in the Commonwealth. Additionally, I would say every year the statistic that sticks out is this past year we arrested 104 people at point of sale for outstanding warrants in real time. Again, that wasn't the firearm violator, but they were otherwise wanted on active criminal warrants, and they were attempting to buy a firearm. So I would turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Reed just to give you some data about downtime. It operates 365 days a year from 0800 in the morning until 10 p.m. in the evening.
So overall, PICS is a more comprehensive system than the NICS system. One flaw, my words, in the NICS system is they have a rule where after 3 business days, if a determination has not been made, they allow the dealer to go ahead and make a transaction. So within a 3-year period from 2020 to 2022, the most recent stats that were available, over 15,000 guns were given to prohibited people, and then the ATF then has to go and retrieve those guns. As far as our checks go, in 2024, 62% of the time we get an immediate response for people, and our wait times have improved again this year. For instance, if you need help on our IVR phone system, the wait time was around 14 minutes, which is 9 minutes quicker than last year and 16 minutes quicker than a year before. Our system was down less than 0.5% this year.
Thank you. And associated with that, obviously we have an independent system, but we pay for that. And my understanding is currently about $5 at the point of sale today. There have been recommendations that $5 has been there for 5 or 10 years, and maybe it should be increased. Do you have an opinion about at the point of sale?
I think it is. It's since the inception of the system, that's the cost. It has not increased, and I believe there is a legislative budget and finance committee report out there that recommends that the fee would be raised to help operate the system. But as of right now, the system does operate additional funds through the state police in order to make it work.
But obviously that offsets something else you could spend money on.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Recognizes Representative Olsummer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Paris, thank you for being here and sharing your testimony today, and the rest of your team, very much appreciated. I'd like to specifically give a shout out to Troop R, specifically our Blooming Grove barracks and our Honesdale barracks. The troopers that are in those barracks do a great job for my region, and the commanders in there have helped me out a lot since I've become a legislator. They help our district office out. Whenever I call on them, they're there. I'd like to ask you, Colonel Paris, can you speak about the progress of your current recruitment efforts, as well as other strategies you are employing, such as the first ever television commercial that was aired last year?
So that was a result of an advertising campaign. The fiscal impact was $700,000. Anecdotally, we got a lot of responses of people who saw it. They thought it was particularly well done. It was strategically designed to drop during the March Madness and take advantage, hopefully, of a younger demographic that would be interested in kind of coming off the football Super Bowl season and then getting into the height of basketball season. Essentially, we did not see, however, a real statistical bump in the number of applicants. Special Assistant Meade has some numbers in terms of how many people are actually signing up with the cycle, but I would tell you we're trying to shorten. We realize we're in a very tight labor market. So in years past, it may take 18 months, even longer, to become a trooper, depending on putting you through all the different batteries of tests. We've shortened that, we believe, as short as we can possibly get it while still keeping the current standards in place, and it is around 6 months, and thankfully, because of the budget and the legislature, we have the money to hire them. We just continue to look very diligently for those who want to become troopers.
So in 2024, our total eligible candidates that took the written exam, well, I should say that applied to take the written exam was 5,184. It increased slightly from 2023, but I can take you back to 2016 when we were at 10,000 applicants. So we have a drastic increase in the number of applicants that we're receiving over the last 10 years.
Thank you. Speaking of new cadets, can you give an update regarding the plans and time frame to construct a new Pennsylvania State Police Academy and how it will be different from the existing facility?
Sure. We have a lot of good news to report there. We've testified here before. Again, the commitment by the governor and the legislature for this capital project, it's phenomenal. We would open the invitation to anyone here who would like to come out and see the progress of it. We're at your convenience. But basically, the entire place is designed on a world-class scale to train troopers with the most hands-on, practical application of skills as possible. The facilities that we have, I feel very comfortable in saying will be world-class. And Lieutenant Colonel Bivens was just at a meeting yesterday. The project is on time. We're about 25% of the way there, and we're very excited about it.
So we expect to start making use of some of the buildings, the outbuildings on the campus as early as May of this year, and that will continue. Ultimately, the main academy building should be occupied by October of 2026. Now, there will be additional construction after that. The old academy needs to be torn down, and some additional construction will occur on top of that. But we'll have all of the same or more capability in that new building that we have with the existing academy. We don't miss a beat. We never shut down operations, and we'll move into that. You know, when the Colonel talked about a world-class training facility, we will have 3 tactical training villages, one right in the main academy building. Now, that's a nearly 800-foot-long, 5-story building with 13 classrooms, 300 individual dorm rooms, and then this, and a number of other offices and so forth. But this tactical training village incorporated into the lower level of it so that it's very easy to go directly from the classroom into a realistic training environment and back. We can, instead of talking in hypotheticals about what you would do, go there and show them what they would do. We'll have 2 other training villages outside. They'll model, in one case, it'll look like a several city block area, 5-story apartment building, convenience store, gas station, pharmacy, you get the picture. I mean, blocks, row homes, that kind of thing, so that we can go out there and when we practice anything from civil disorder training on up to building entries, again, we're not just simulating it. It'll be, you know, there are actual streets, and you can go out there and the mounted unit and, you know, a mobile field force can practice there. So I know we're out of time, but again, I hope you'll take us up on the offer. Please come over and take a look.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Kale.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I didn't realize I was up immediately. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me, Colonel. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the state police. I know a lot of my fellow members have mentioned barracks around the state. I have the good fortune of having a barracks not just in my district, but about a mile away from where I live, the Brighton Township barracks. And your troopers there are amazing. In fact, your organization, the level of professionalism, it really sets the standard across the Commonwealth. And it's very much appreciated. And that leads to my question, and it's been touched on a lot here today, about recruitment and how it's becoming more and more difficult to recruit people to come into the force. And I remember, it's probably been about 20 years now, when my cousin actually applied to be a state police officer. And it was a very rigorous process, and it was a very, very competitive process. He ended up not getting it, went into the Pittsburgh police force and had a good career there. But what has happened over the course of the last, number of years, however long it's been, that changed this recruitment issue that we have now in the Commonwealth?
It would be speculation on my part, but my best guess is that it's just not as much of a sought-after or valued profession when people see themselves, coming back out. I would say we're up against several things in terms of generational differences. I mean, the paradigm to become a Pennsylvania State Trooper or a Pittsburgh police officer is to work your entire career and have a good career, commit to something bigger and greater than yourself, and then you enjoy your retirement. Younger people today are, again, a very tight job market. They are looking to, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but looking to see what they want to do. I talked to a nephew of mine who's in his late 20s. Next year or the year after might not be the same job that he's in right now. And I think of my own career trajectory at my late 20s, I was already a corporal in the state police. I had my career all planned out. So I think that those are the things that I would say that we're kind of up against, and I would just say that it's pervasive across the United States. But I would say that, again, to reiterate, the people that we see walking across the stage, I have the opportunity during graduation week to spend a lot of time with them on 3 separate occasions, culminating with graduation. And I'm always inspired. I know I speak for the command staff. I'm always inspired to see the people who walk across the stage. So I do believe, again, we're going to continue to look hard, and we're going to find good people that want to come in to the Pennsylvania State Police.
Are there market forces at play as it relates to maybe pay isn't where it would have been 20-some years ago as far as compared to cost of living and stuff like that, or is it?
I would say, in any job, an extrinsic motivator is always pay. And as the labor market is tight, that's a factor that needs to be addressed.
Okay. As far as, could you help help us understand what type of recruiting efforts you have been doing over the course of the last couple of years, and which programs have been successful, and which ones could we be helpful with going forward?
Sure. So I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel King, but I would say that, the $300,000 appropriation for the Law and Leadership and Hill Impact Program, we believe that has yielded good fruit in the short term. We never really traditionally tracked the Camp Cadet program, which went back to the early 1970s, I believe. But there are a lot anecdotally of troopers and police officers who attended that and then chose to ultimately decide to be a member of law enforcement. But I think, Lieutenant Colonel King will tell you, we're trying to be as visible as we can, different collaborations, one recently with Penn State. We've tried to have a presence on all of the PASHE schools at the PSAC. We've tried to recruit athletes. We try to get into any space where there's a willing participant to listen to us, to hear and contemplate, becoming part of the Pennsylvania State Police and doing good work.
So just to add, this new generation, very tech savvy, so we spend a lot of time on social media now, platforms. We do a lot of in-house stuff. Our media unit produces a lot of, for lack of a better term, commercials on these social media platforms, which has garnered a lot of interest. We also mentioned earlier Hill Impact, Law and Leadership. We're really trying to get the younger age groups interested in law enforcement. Hopefully that carries over as they get older. Other things that our recruiters are doing is we spend a lot of time one-on-one mentoring potential applicants. So they're making phone calls at least once a week, getting status updates, checking on them, providing them with physical fitness routines and sample tests that they can do to help prepare them for the academy. So that's something that I can recall from 20 years ago.
Well, I just want to say thank you. And, you know, as a legislator, the laws we pass don't mean anything if we don't have people that are out there willing to enforce it. And you guys do a great job. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Curry.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Colonel, and to the team that's here today. I have 2 questions. My first question is around the alert system, Amber Alert, Silver Alert, and all the systems that are in place around missing persons here in the Commonwealth. Legislation was introduced last session around something called the Ebony Alert, which is an alert system that was passed in California around the fact that Black and brown girls mostly, and boys, but Black and brown girls between the ages of 12 to 24 don't get the media attention when they go missing near as much as others. And so looking at this system, it went through Children and Youth. We had conversations about it. One of the departments that was against it was the state police. So I'm just curious, with our alert systems, why there might be some pushback to it. Is it because of cost analysis, or just to get your take on it for a system that looks for missing children that are often overlooked as runaways to be implemented here in Pennsylvania?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I'm familiar with that legislative discussion. Before I turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens, we haven't had an Amber Alert in the Commonwealth for I believe, close to 18 months. The last one that was activated happened to be a Black female, I'm told, juvenile. But if it doesn't meet the criteria for the Amber Alert, the MIPA alert, the Missing Endangered Person Alert, is the catch-all for everybody else aside from a juvenile. So we kind of have we have a bifurcated system. There is data that shows, going back to the inception of the Amber Hagerman 1996 murder in Texas, which was the genesis of all Amber Alert, the concern with the system is to make sure that it is utilized properly with the criteria, because not to say that children on milk cartons are not a worthy effort, but that was always the colloquial term that was used, that you can desensitize the very population that you're going to rely upon as a force multiplier to bring the child home alive. So I'd turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens to tell you the rest of, that functions under our Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and the people are highly trained criminal investigative analysts that look at that criteria, first to discern if it's an Amber, second to determine if it's a MIPA. We've had several hundred MIPAs, I might add. And we're not aware of any areas where we've had people come forward and tell us that MIPA was underutilized. There is a education component that I'll let Lieutenant Colonel.
Right, and before you start, I just want to say, what do you think is important in terms of the education? Because right now, I heard you talk about social media. Social media is the alert system, in my opinion. We see tons of people putting on, hey, my child's missing, look for this person. I had 2 that I shared this week. So, I think the purpose of these alert systems is because people are missing. Statistically, we know in our communities, this is something that goes on. Just to give everybody a statistic, most Black children that go missing, they're looked at as runaways first. And so we need to put an end to this notion of it. So what's the education that has to go out around that part?
So I would say in those areas where there is an underutilization, perhaps by a municipal agency, not casting an aspersion at any one, to avail them of the services that the MIPA can provide. And I turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens to give you some additional.
And really, that for us is the crux of it. We're not necessarily in favor of creating a dozen different types of alerts, because we've had proposals, for veteran alerts and the Ebony alerts and Silver alerts and on, all worthwhile and all well-intended. The issue for us is, rather than trying to educate law enforcement and the community in terms of making sure that they're reporting to law enforcement, and law enforcement that they're utilizing service that's available, rather than try and educate them on the criteria for 8 or 10 or 12 different systems. We would rather focus on trying to educate them on the use of MEPA and encourage it so that that system can be fully utilized. To the extent that if there's a community that you believe is not utilizing that, we'd be happy to work with you and take a look at whether it's the law enforcement piece that we need to work with, and we can certainly work through MOPEC to get additional information out to local departments to make sure that they fully understand how it works and how to activate that system. We try to make it as easy as possible. We have people available that take that call 24/7 and are highly trained and quickly analyzing a situation, both to determine whether it's an amber or meets the criteria for the MEPA, and then working with those agencies as we go forward. So I really see it as as the Colonel said, as an educational issue in making sure that those reports go to the police and the police fully bring those to us for consideration.
Okay, we'd love to have more conversation with you about it, because I think there's a lot more around it than just, hey, this hasn't been utilized or put into action, because it's going on the streets. So we need to be able to have a system that really pays attention to those things, and I think education is a big part of it. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of you for being here today, and also for all of the service that you provide to our Commonwealth, which is so important. I know today I learned a lot about a number of things that you do in our Commonwealth that I maybe didn't know about before. I think a lot of people at home would be surprised to hear about all of the places that you are working, not only geographically, but just the areas within our Commonwealth, from motor carrier safety inspections to labs. I mean, there's just a whole list. I was writing them down. I ran out of room on my paper. But I know there was some conversation about the services that are provided by PSP in the more rural areas. I know my first budget hearing last session, I believe I asked you guys also about some of the urban areas and how you also provide some services and backup in those areas, particularly in Philadelphia. My district is in Bucks County. So I was just wondering if you could comment on the services that you provide, in Philadelphia and in areas like that, just so that folks have a sense of that as well.
Sure. I just testified this morning in front of the Senate with Chairman Hughes. We enjoy a very close working relationship with Commissioner Bethel and Philadelphia Police. In reverse chronological order, we rendered assistance for the Eagles Parade. Last Friday, we had troopers deployed for the Super Bowl. We had troopers deployed for the NFC Championship. We had a fairly active spring with the pro-Palestinian protests that were occurring not just in Philadelphia, but all across the Commonwealth. And as evidenced by the tragic plane crash several weeks ago, we had 50 troopers on the ground in very short order to assist Philly PD. And that's really the model we strive to apply everywhere. I mean, we're helping the city of Chester, we're helping the Lehigh Valley area, we're helping Harrisburg City, we're helping Aliquippa and the Mon Valley, we're helping Pittsburgh City with some big events that are coming up within the next year. So we really try to look at the operational landscape, and we want to be in a position to say yes to our federal, our municipal, our fellow state, and our county partners.
Well, we appreciate all the services that you are providing, and hoping also that you're not spread too thin, so that we can support you in everything that you need to do for the Commonwealth. Another area that is another service you provide is relating to school safety and assessment. And so for Act 44 of 2018, this was a piece that you're essentially helping us with for school safety and assessment. So I was reading your testimony that you have 18 full-time troopers assigned to the Risk and Vulnerability Assessment Team. And I looked on, I think it was a 2024 report that you've conducted 350 assessments, or at least when that report was done, that was the number that was provided. I was wondering if you could comment first on, is there a backlog? Is this like something that a lot of not only schools, but houses of worship. You know, there's a whole list of types of, you know, government entities and private schools. You know, there's a whole group of people that can be requesting those. Is there a backlog? Is there a need to have more staff in that area? Just wanted to get some commentary from you on that.
So there is a backlog currently. What I would tell you is that the number that you quoted for this past year was actually a low number for us. More typical would be upwards of 500 or so evaluations done in a particular year. We experienced a few retirements and transfers out of that unit, and it takes some time to bring new members in and get them all of the requisite training so that they're able to go out and do those assessments. I'm happy to report that we're back up to complement, and we expect those numbers to be coming back up. You know, with regard to the backlog, we prioritize those various requests and try to get to them as quickly as possible. There are certainly some that are seen as urgent and bumped right to the top, and others, you know, again, we endeavor in a year or less to try to make sure that we have been able to do those assessments. You know, one of the challenges for us with schools, for example, we need to do those assessments while school is in session. So again, we try to work the scheduling around it, but depending on the number of schools that have requested assessments, you know, it may not be possible to get them all in, and they get carried over for a bit until the start of the next school year, because it's important to us to see that the interaction of the staff, the kids, the traffic that occurs there, and to be able to interact with everyone that's working there, to have a true understanding of what the picture is and where we can improve.
And thank you so much for that information. I appreciate it. Really quick, do you think that essentially your staffing levels and resources are allowing you to be able to be compliant with that act?
I do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank the gentlelady. Representative Siegel.
Chairman and Colonel Paris, thank you again for being here, as well as with your team. And I just want to extend my gratitude to yourself, your team, and all of the men and women in uniform who protect the streets and highways of Pennsylvania and keep our Commonwealth safe, and commend you again for the incredible partnerships you have forged with the city of Allentown, specifically around maintenance of speeding. You've made our streets much safer and put pedestrians in a much better spot, so I applaud you for that. I want to start first with marijuana legalization and just, I think, the improper or imprecise framing of the issue, and just get some clarifications that I think matter as we move forward. And I just want to tap into your expertise as a premier law enforcement professional. I think when we talk about the legalization of marijuana, we frame it in the sense that we're entering some sort of dark dystopian world, and there's this implication that the world as we exist in now, there are no existing ails or issues. Is it fair and accurate to say in your assessment that the marijuana market as it exists now, specifically the illicit market, is extraordinarily robust and lucrative, and that both criminal elements, such as cartels and gangs, benefit directly from that robust illicit market?
There is an illicit market in Pennsylvania, and it does have a link to violent crime, yes.
And is it fair to say that by cutting off that illicit market, you would impede or otherwise undermine nefarious actors' ability to get access to cash by which they could finance other functions?
Potentially, dependent on the legislation.
Okay. And is it fair to say that despite the fact that we waged a nearly 40-year war on drugs, that obviously there remains a robust and fairly illicit drug market for all drugs, but particularly marijuana?
Yes.
Okay. And is it fair to say that roughly 50% of all drug-related arrests in the United States basically involve some sort of marijuana possession or marijuana distribution?
I'm not familiar with that specific statistic, but...
Consumes a considerable amount of police resources, though. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
I appreciate that. I just want to basically surmise that it's been estimated that about 40 to 60% of all the marijuana consumed in the United States emanates from Mexican growers. So it's being smuggled across the border to basically satisfy the illicit demand and illicit desire here in the United States. And a 2018 study by the Cato Institute, which is a conservative-leaning think tank, actually found that state legalization of marijuana in the states that had legalized it at the time had done more to reduce illicit trafficking across the border than the doubling of Border Patrol agents and the laying of 600 miles of border fence. So I'd just like to posit that if we're trying to figure out how to secure the border and make our country and our community safer, take illicit drugs off the street, I think one of the best things we could do is legalize a substance that, for all intents and purposes, is significantly safer than alcohol. Take some of that revenue and invest it in the Commonwealth. And I think based on the fact that we currently have an illicit market that certainly provides a tremendous amount of cash infusion to illicit and nefarious actors. Legalizing it should make us much safer. I want to turn my attention now to Act 57. As you well know, we implemented a database in 2020 that was supposed to make it easier for municipal departments to verify misconduct of officers across the state and obviously prevent folks from, being hired in one department if they were discharged from another for, violation of their duty. Can you just talk a little bit about Act 57, how successfully it's been implemented? What is the participation like by municipal departments, and what is the usage of that database?
So Act 57 resides within the Municipal Police Officers Training and Education Commission, Major Bill Brown. It is fully operational. I want to say there are approximately 31,000 entries that are in the system, and we believe that it is being utilized as agencies make hiring decisions and also retire or discipline and or dismiss officers, that those entries are being put into the system.
Do you have an idea of, out of all the municipal police departments in the Commonwealth, what the degree of participation is, or is there any way to verify how frequently they're complying with it or utilizing
I can get you
system?
that information. I will get that to you, sir.
Excellent. And do you know, have we done any sort of evaluation on, is there an annual report or some sort of assessment on the effectiveness of that database and how frequently departments are tapping into it?
I believe that it is widely used as a result of the law being passed. If there is one of those nearly 1,100 agencies that's about to hire somebody, we believe that they're bumping the database, but I can get you the statistics specifically.
I would appreciate that. And obviously, given your position, and I think you would concur, hiring is the most important decision you can make. You want to make sure that folks are a credit to the uniform and that they bring with them the right composition of character, integrity, and commitment to the badge. And so it's your assessment that that database is having a positive impact on the quality of policing around the Commonwealth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Colonel Paris, and for all your work.
Thank the gentleman.
Specifically, not necessarily on the law enforcement side of things, but they're involved in the community. They're really involved in Camp Cadet. And we run a Camp Cadet, and I've worked with them closely on it, and it's something that a lot of people don't get to hear of the involvement in our respective communities that you do, so I'm grateful for that, and thank you very much. I wanted to recognize that, and I'll be quick. I simply wanted to talk about the, pardon me, the instant check system. So the appropriation for the gun checks was increased by 2.2%, $168,000. So I guess my question is, has the governor proposed any changes to the system, increases in the fees, or how PICS operates, since there's not a new proposal included as part of the budget request?
No, I think the system as it stands right now it comes out of the the state police general budget, in addition to whatever money is brought in from the fee that's assessed.
So there's just an increase for known.
The state police pays for the unfunded portion of PICS, not funded through the fees charged. The state police pays the rest of it.
Okay, let me just ask. Are you, or is your department or your team or the Commonwealth working to improve and update PICS without any new proposal offered?
We're always looking to try and make it run more efficiently, as Lieutenant Colonel Reed said. But if you're asking, the legislation would have to raise the fee if that was so decided here in the legislature.
I understand. Thank you. That was all my question. I yield my time, Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Mullins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Colonel, to you and your team, thank you so much for being here. Very proud that you called the 112th House District home, and I hope you're generally satisfied with your representation here in Harrisburg.
Yes, sir.
I know I'm very lucky to call you ours. Both as a citizen here and also as a Northeast PA resident. But I wanted to focus on something that is critically important to your complement, to your officers, but also to the public at large, and that's mental health. Of course, you are tasked with dealing with, on so many days, at a moment's notice people in vulnerable situations, people in crisis. So I want, if you could just expand a little bit of how your troopers are trained to deal with individuals in a mental health crisis, but also how is your force, how is the department also, how are you taking care of yourselves as far as officers' mental health and well-being?
So as members of the current front office, Lieutenant Colonels Reed and Bivens were former directors of our Bureau of Training and Education, which rests under Lieutenant Colonel King's shop currently. We're very proud of a collaboration with Penn State Hershey to deal with scenario-based training that constantly is updated in our basic training curricula for dealing with people in mental crisis. I can tell you mandatory in-service that every trooper goes through always has a component in dealing with somebody in mental distress, as well as an attempt to de-escalate the situation. We've tried to do some things and be accessible to the autism community. We tried to publicize a card that you can go on our website, print out, and carry. An individual with autism can carry it with them with any additional specific facts or circumstances that might help that police encounter when it does happen, if it does happen, run more smoothly. So we're always trying to be at the forefront of that, where we're dealing with people on their worst day, and sometimes more complex the problem, the simpler the answer in terms of we endeavor to treat people the way we would want our family to be treated. So that's on the mental health side. I'll let Lieutenant King tell you a little bit more about the training collaboration in Hershey. As far as members' assistance, our members' assistance program is made up of 8 full-time people that are tasked with maintaining the mental wellness of our people. Station visits, responding to critical incidents, responding to incidents where there might be a particularly gruesome, death or death of a child, homicide investigation, something of that. Last year, that system was accessed almost 14,000 times across the Commonwealth. They're heavily involved in our major case team activations for officer-involved shootings or serious police incidents. They also administer a very robust chaplaincy program, which has well over 100 chaplains, and we also have peer contacts where troopers are not trained as practitioners. They're more of a pointer index and a confidential listening ear, so long as it's not a violation of a law or a threat to self or others, where somebody can look in an old-fashioned phone book and say, I'm working in Philadelphia, I want to know a member's assistance peer contact in Erie that would have chances to have no idea of who I am and what I'm potentially dealing with and reach out for help. One of the things that additional things that we tried to do is implement a mental health app. So we've partnered with Guide. We're rolling that out now, and unlike other apps that we've seen where they are pointer indexes, meaning you can download the app to the phone and then it gives you all of the benefits that are applicable under the contract or the employee benefits package. This is actually content-based. So the person, Corporal Natalie Watkin, who is our leader, director of MAP, any of the topics, she authorizes ultimate editorial control, but resiliency, sleep, good nutrition, working out, a whole host of app-type podcasts or short vignettes that troopers can utilize. Now, that was something that I would say perhaps in the past we might not have anticipated a robust enrollment, but we're seeing right now about 14% of our members have downloaded the app. How many are using it remains to be seen, and we're going to continue to evaluate that. And I'll add, in terms of the wellness, because of issues that sometimes get brought in from personal life into the job, the app is applicable to members' families as well. So back to Lieutenant Colonel King for Penn State Hershey.
So Lieutenant Colonel Bivens had mentioned before with the Academy project that scenario-based training is the big part. Try to make it as realistic as possible in real life. And we're proud to say with our partnership with Penn State Health that that's a big component of it. So realistic scenarios that that's at the Academy when they receive their initial training. They go through role playing and try to mimic as close as possible what they're going to count on once they get out in the field. So that's been a game changer for us as much as possible, keep it real. And then just to
Well, I'm out of time. So.
Thank you so much. This is clearly a priority of yours, and if there's a way we can help promote things like the autism card with that information, if there's a way that we as public officials could help to promote any of these measures, I hope you wouldn't be shy in telling us. So thanks so much for your service.
Thanks, gentlelady. Gentlemen. It's a long day. I'm sorry. Thank the gentleman.
I'll take gentlemen. I'll take gentlemen.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yes, long day, lots of questions, and it's great to have you here. You know, big supporter of our troopers and the role that they play in the state. I also want to give a shout out to Camp Cadet, and I'm Westmoreland County. You know, Trooper Kowalski's running that whole team. You know, our kid number 7 got to participate in that Camp Cadet last summer. The oath and the process of learning that oath and then applying that to school, you know, as everyone has those moments, was outstanding. So my wife has forwarded to some other middle school kids so that they'll be able to attend this coming year as well. I also wanted to appreciate the security reviews for the churches. You know, our churches have participated in that. It's been extremely helpful. And crossing over, does that same team, the Risk and Vulnerability Assessment team, do they evaluate the trooper barracks on an ongoing basis? I'm asking this because the budget didn't really list anything for hardening of barracks.
So they do work with our facility management team as we're designing new stations, or even if an issue comes up and we decide we need to retrofit existing stations. We will work with them, get a number of recommendations. Some, much as in a school or a house of worship, some we will accept, some we will not. I mean, in the end, our stations have to be accessible to the public, welcoming to the public. We need to have them as secure as possible also. But they can't be fortresses.
Yes, it seems like trying to keep that balance, you know, in listening to the troopers in our region, you know, maybe there'll be verbal threats. People say they're going to do things a few times a year. I think, you know, we had that incident in Blooming Grove with Corporal Byron Dixon a number of years ago. Lewistown had been shot at. Katanning had a vehicle drive into it, and I think there was even an IED in Indiana years ago. So it's good to know there's not because it's not listed, it's just an ongoing operational review.
It is.
Great. And if we cross over onto the hardening of the facilities, the hardening of the vehicles themselves, you know, Trooper Jacques Rougeau, 2023, you know, he was killed in an ambush, shot through the windshield of his car. The Texas legislature had passed, they legislatively mandated that their vehicles get upgraded to ballistic windshield and side doors and panels. You know, the budget does have $20 million in it for vehicles. Are there plans in the works to do a similar upgrade for Pennsylvania's vehicles?
So there is not a specific plan at this time to do those kinds of upgrades. I will tell you that cost is a big factor, but vehicle performance also becomes a factor. When you try to put those panels in, you know, well, let me back up. There's a risk reward that we also try and take a look at. Where are the risks, the threats to our troopers, and where can we spend money to try and mitigate those? By and large, the type of policing that we do and the experience that we've had, with some very few exceptions, and you've named one or two of those, Rougeau being one of the more recent, with exceptions for those few instances, that has not been the manner of injury or death of our troopers. And we believe that there is probably a better way for us to spend some of that money. We also don't want to degrade the performance of the patrol cars. When you add weight into the doors, into the windshield, and so forth, again, it changes the performance, it changes the handling of those cars. So we're not opposed going forward at looking at options as technology continues to evolve, and there may be something out there, or the threat changes, candidly. we may need to move in that direction, but that has not been a priority for us.
Great. And then just one last question with the, Governor Shapiro had the space optimization and utilization task force to reduce buildings. And have you been aware or involved in any plans or discussions to close any barracks, which is a sensitive issue?
The short answer is no, and that was largely, I believe, a result of a COVID world and remote, but we do not do telework, so all of the facilities that we have traditionally occupied, we continue to believe we're going to occupy in the future.
Great, great to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank the gentleman. Chairman Struzzi, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon again. The $2.5 million that is being proposed to help with your efforts if recreational marijuana is legalized, how was that number arrived at?
I would refer you to the budget office with Secretary Munson.
So you guys, just to reiterate, you weren't involved in those discussions at all to come up with that figure? Okay, so it really could then be a whole lot more as far as funding related to what, and this money I assume is coming out of the amount that would be raised from legalizing recreational marijuana. But your cost could be much higher than 2.5 million.
I think it depends on the ultimate legislation, and I would refer you to the budget office.
Okay. And I would assume then, though, if the state police are going to have costs related to whatever you want to call it, the transition to recreational marijuana being legalized and all of the parameters that come with that, that our municipal police, our city police will all face the same challenges.
I think depending on the statutory scheme enacted, that's a reasonable conclusion.
Okay. All right. That's all I really have for this afternoon. I appreciate you all being here, and as has been said, we all appreciate what you do for our communities, keeping our families safe, and we wish you luck in your recruitment efforts, and we are here to help. And related to the complement increase, we have and will continue to support that as well. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Chairman. Colonel, quickly, as the hour has far spent, I think it's well known of my love for the Clean Slate Act and the work we've done in a bipartisan fashion in this chamber around criminal records. I'm told there is a backlog on the processing of expungement orders by PSP. Is that true?
So a couple steps back. When we testified in year one before you, we dealt with Purpose Code I, which I'd like to just parenthetically insert. That was where the FBI, the records within the Pennsylvania check were sealed. However, if an employer hit off an FBI database, that was, as you recall, our concern there was the migration from a Unisys statewide storage system to the Azure. That has occurred, and I'm proud to report, thanks to the work of Lieutenant Colonel Reed and her team, that we are in compliance with Clean Slate 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. As far as expungements, I know there is a delay. We were hit with, I believe it was 19,000 expungements that came to us out of Philadelphia. So the remainder of the 66 counties, the turnaround time is within 3 months, but keeping in mind we need to receive the final declination from the court once it's expunged. We hope to have that queue knocked down out of Philadelphia, but largely those were, I'm told, many or the majority of them were summary offenses that were expunged, and we're working diligently. That's a 6-month backlog, but we continue to chop it down, and I'd open it to Lieutenant Colonel Reed if there's anything else she would add.
No, you covered it, sir.
Do you have a timeline on when you'd be able to chop down that backlog?
Yes, we believe in 6 months it will be complete, and as I said, the timeline for the other 66 counties is within 3 months when we get an expungement, depending on the flow, but many of them are expunged more quickly than that.
Okay. The city of Philadelphia, some years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, sued because there were 3 gun shops in Philadelphia that the lawsuit alleged was responsible for about 160 illegal firearms through straw purchases. You have authority, I believe, to, I guess, examine gun shops. Can you tell me where you are with gun stores?
Sure, I turn that over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens.
So we have the ability, and we do actively review records within, sorry, I'm leaning here to see you. We do actively review those records. We have an audit unit. We've expanded that audit unit within R&I, and they are actively looking at records. But they also have really taken on an educational role. So we've gone out and tried to work with gun shops, FFLs, to educate them so that there's voluntary compliance with the law. But certainly we do look for those shops that potentially have been involved in a number of straw purchases, and we take a look to see whether they're in compliance.
So if this lawsuit is accurate, how is it that a gun shop gets to that level where it is that, with regards to just these 3 gun shops out of all of Philadelphia, these ones are the ones responsible for all of these illegal guns and straw purchases?
In fairness, sir, I'm not familiar with that lawsuit or those 3 gun shops. We would have to take a look at that.
I will get you the names of those 3 gun shops that are part of the lawsuit. My bigger question is just around what are we doing to ensure that gun shops that have been shown to be problematic are actually being addressed. I mean, you know, one of the biggest ways for me to talk about cutting down on gun violence across this Commonwealth is about where the guns are coming from. And if we have problematic gun shops, you know, what are we actively doing to address that issue?
And again, we'll be happy to take a look at those 3. We certainly work closely with the ATF as well when warranted. You know, in some cases, there are explanations. So, for example, you can have a gun shop that does a very large volume of business, and we do end up with either some straw purchases or some firearms that are used in crimes that come back there. When looked at as a percentage of their overall sales, it's a very small number. But, and again, you know, we are limited to being able to go in and look at their practice and whether they're in compliance with the law in terms of, you know, requiring IDs and filling out all of the appropriate forms, performing the checks that are required.
If they're not in compliance, what authority does the state police have?
We would have to work with the ATF on any type of action against their license.
So you couldn't shut them down unilaterally?
I don't believe we have that authority, sir.
Okay. Well, I will share with you the lawsuit and how they outline these 3 particular gun shops. But, you know, I just want to put on the record, for me, I'm very concerned about, you know, us doing more of monitoring these gun shops to see where the illegal guns are actually coming from, and to see what we can do if consistently we find out that you are the bad actor, we should be addressing those stores as such to make sure that we're getting guns off the streets of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and any city in between. We can't say we care about gun violence if we're not going to go to the root of where some of these guns are coming from, particularly when we can identify that there is a connection between all of these illegal guns and them coming from one particular store or 2 or 3 stores.
Again, we'll be happy to take a look at that with you, sir.
Absolutely. And with that, I will thank you, Colonel, and all from the Pennsylvania State Police for being here with us today and answering all the members' questions. We are going to be back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, where we will have the Pennsylvania State System. I'm sorry, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, I got it, 10 o'clock. We will be here at 10 o'clock with the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education and the community colleges. 10 o'clock, same place, community colleges, Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education. With that, this hearing, the Appropriations Committee, is now adjourned.